A city of targets. The city pulsed, a chaotic symphony of hawkers' cries, rumbling trams, and the insistent blare of automobile horns. Sunlight glinted off the gilded domes of churches, only to be swallowed by the grimy canyons between towering factories. Women in vibrant headscarves haggled over spices in the marketplace, their laughter mingling with the mournful strains of a lone accordion player. It was a city of opportunity, of dreams chased and crushed, of saints and sinners rubbing shoulders in the relentless flow of humanity. A city of targets. Alexei's apartment, a cramped space above a butcher shop, reeked of stale tobacco and simmering discontent. Posters of Lenin and Marx plastered the walls, vying for space with pamphlets decrying capitalism and celebrating the proletariat. A half-eaten loaf of bread sat on a table littered with communist manifestos and well-worn copies of Pravda. He kicked aside a stack of leaflets as he paced, his boots thudding on the bare wooden floor. Downstairs, at the Red Rooster Café, Alexei slammed his fist on the table, rattling the mismatched cups. "Look around you," he exclaimed, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury. His friends, Dmitri and Anya, exchanged weary glances. They're all sleepwalking, drowning their sorrows in incense and fairy tales. Religion is the opiate of the masses, I tell you. It keeps them docile, prevents them from seeing the chains that bind them. Dmitri, a lanky student with perpetually ink-stained fingers, sighed. "Easy, Alexei. You'll wake the whole district." "Good," Alexei retorted, his eyes burning with fervor. "Maybe then they'll finally see the truth. This city, this country. It's being suffocated by superstition and blind faith." He pointed a trembling finger towards the golden cross that adorned the nearby cathedral. "That symbol, that is a symbol of our oppression. We need to tear it down, brick by brick, and build a new world on its ashes." Anya nervously fiddled with the hem of her scarf, her gaze darting towards the window. Alexei's anger was a live wire, sparking unpredictably. She knew he was close to doing something reckless, something that would land them all in trouble. The garden and the rant. The late afternoon sun painted the church garden in hues of gold and amber. Sister Mary, her brow lightly furrowed, gently pruned a rose bush, the scent of damp earth and blooming petals filling the air. Her weathered hands, calloused yet delicate, moved with practiced grace. A robin perched on the nearby stone birdbath, chirping a cheerful melody. A shadow fell across the garden path. Alexei, his face a thundercloud, strode purposefully towards her. The robin took flight. "So," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "Still wasting your time on this pathetic display? While the world rots from the lies you peddle." Sister Mary straightened, her expression unreadable. She laid her pruning shears on the bench. "Good afternoon, Alexei." "Good? There's nothing good about it. You and your kind, leeching off the working class, promising them paradise in the sky while you live in comfort. A fancy garden, funded by guilt and superstition." He gestured wildly at the meticulously arranged flower beds. "Look at you, dressed like some medieval relic. Blindly following fairy tales while real people suffer." His voice rose, echoing off the stone walls of the church. "You mock progress. You stifle reason. You are a parasite, sister. A stain on humanity." He leaned closer, his eyes blazing. "And don't think I've forgotten that condescending look you gave me. You think you're better than me. Because you hide behind a robe and spout nonsense. The bucket of shame." The sneer on Sister Mary's face, that quiet, knowing amusement, was more than Alexei could bear. It felt like she saw straight through him, through the bravado, through the revolutionary fervor, to the scared little boy underneath. He lunged for the metal bucket hanging near the courtyard tap. It clanged against the brick wall as he wrestled it free, the sound echoing in the sudden silence that had fallen over the other workers. He filled the bucket with icy water, the cold seeping into his hands, but the burn of his humiliation was far hotter. He marched back to Sister Mary, the bucket sloshing, scattering droplets that stung his own face. "Maybe this will wash away that smug look," he spat. He didn't wait for a response. He hoisted the bucket and with a grunt of fury, hurled the contents at her. The water cascaded over her head, plastering her thin habit to her body, the dark fabric now clinging and translucent. She gasped, but it was a small, almost polite sound. Alexei expected tears, a scream, some sign of outrage. Instead, Sister Mary simply blinked, water running down her face like a cleansing rain. Her eyes, usually hidden in the shadow of her cowl, were a startling, unwavering blue. There was a deep sadness in them, but no fear, no anger. She looked at him, really looked at him, and then, without a word, turned and walked away, leaving a trail of shimmering water on the dusty ground. The silence, heavier now, pressed down on Alexei, colder than the water that still dripped from his hands. Echoes of guilt. The cobblestones were slick beneath Alexei's boots, reflecting the pale dawn light. He forced himself to lengthen his stride, away from the looming silhouette of the church, away from the stunned silence he'd left behind. Water still clung to his hands, a clammy reminder. They deserved it, he muttered, the words swallowed by the morning breeze. Deserved it for their gilded icons, for their smug pronouncements, for their, he trailed off. The justification felt flimsy, even to him. A cold knot tightened in his stomach. He pictured Sister Irina's face, not the sneering visage of the woman who'd mocked the party, but the pale, drawn features of the woman who had knelt beside his father, her hand steady on his chest. Saved him. His father, a man who'd preached the virtues of dialectical materialism, saved by a nun. The irony was a bitter pill. He imagined his father's disappointment if he knew. Not about the nun, but about the pettiness of Alexei's act. Had he really proven anything? Or just sunk to their level? He spat on the ground, the sound jarringly loud in the quiet street. Rounding the corner, he spotted Dmitri and Anya leaning against the bakery wall, cigarettes dangling from their lips. They grinned as he approached. "Well?" Dmitri asked, a hint of anticipation in his voice. "Did you give them a taste of the revolution, Alexei?" Alexei puffed out his chest, forcing a confident smile. "More than a taste," he said, a little too loudly. "They'll think twice before spreading their backward superstitions now." Anya chuckled, but he noticed a flicker of something in her eyes, doubt. Disapproval. He couldn't tell. He just wanted them to see him as a righteous avenger, not a conflicted fool. A baker's heart. The yeasty warmth of the bakery clung to Dmitri like a second skin. Flour dusted his eyelashes, painting him a ghostly white against the perpetual flush of his cheeks. He kneaded the dough with a rhythmic precision honed over decades, the muscles in his forearms bunching and relaxing. "Alexei," he boomed, his voice roughened by years of shouting over the clatter of pans. "Are those poppy seeds ready?" And less dawdling, more doing. He didn't wait for a response, already moving to check the rising loaves in the oven. The scent of baking bread, a comforting aroma that usually filled Alexei with a sense of home, was today only a faint undercurrent to his own simmering anxieties. The last loaf cooling, Dmitri wiped his hands on his apron, leaving a smear of flour. "Enough for today," he announced, his voice softer now. He walked out into the evening air, the city sounds a jarring contrast to the quiet hum of the bakery. He usually enjoyed this walk, the cool air a balm after the oven's heat. He pictured surprising Alexei with a small treat, perhaps a new book he'd seen in the market. But halfway home, a sharp pain seized his chest, a vice tightening with each breath. The pavement swam before his eyes. He gasped, clutching at his coat, the pain exploding into his arm. Then, darkness. A gasp rippled through the small crowd that quickly gathered. A woman screamed. "Someone help! He's not breathing." A young woman, her face pale beneath a dark habit, pushed her way through. "Give him space," she commanded, her voice surprisingly firm. Kneeling beside the fallen baker, she pressed her fingers to his throat, searching for a pulse. Panic flared in her eyes, but she pushed it down. This was not the time for fear. Helplessness and hope. Alexei shoved through the throng, a guttural cry escaping his lips. "Papa! Papa!" He dropped to his knees beside the crumpled form of his father, his face a ghastly gray. Each shallow, ragged breath was a rasping agony that clawed at Alexei's insides. Around him, chaos erupted. Voices, sharp and shrill, pierced the afternoon air. "Get a doctor," someone shrieked. "Is there a doctor here?" another echoed, the question bouncing off the surrounding buildings, unanswered. A woman sobbed hysterically, while a burly man pushed his way forward, shouting useless instructions that were lost in the din. Alexei clawed at his father's collar, loosening it frantically. His hands trembled so violently he could barely manage the buttons. He remembered snippets of first aid lessons from school, useless now, replaced by a paralyzing fear. He pressed his ear to his father's chest, desperately seeking the familiar, steady thump. It was faint, thready, almost gone. "Papa, breathe. Please, Papa, breathe," Alexei pleaded, his voice cracking. He looked around, his gaze landing on the woman in the habit, the one he had wronged. She stood back from the immediate crush, her face etched with concern, but there was a calmness about her that cut through the hysteria. An idea, desperate and humiliating, bloomed in his mind. He had nowhere else to turn. "Help," he choked out, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, someone, help him." An angel in disguise. The crowd was a wall of bewildered faces, murmuring anxieties that did nothing to help Alexei's father, now frighteningly still on the cobblestones. Alexei screamed again, a raw sound torn from his throat. Then, a figure in blue pushed through, not with force, but with a quiet, unwavering determination that parted the onlookers like the Red Sea. Sister Mary. Her face, usually serene, was now etched with purpose. She knelt beside Alexei's father, her rosary beads clinking softly against her habit as she assessed him with quick, practiced movements. "Someone call for a doctor, quickly," she commanded, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the rising panic. Without waiting, she positioned herself, her hands finding the center of his chest. Alexei watched, mesmerized, as she began compressions. Her brow furrowed in concentration, her lips moving silently, perhaps in prayer, perhaps counting. Sunlight glinted off the silver cross hanging from her neck as she pumped rhythmically, each push a desperate plea for life. The air crackled with a strange, electric tension. The rhythmic thump of her hands, the ragged gasps of onlookers, the distant wail of a siren growing louder. Alexei's own breath hitched in his throat. He had mocked her, reviled her beliefs, and now she was here, an angel in disguise, fighting for the life of the men he loved most. Her face, illuminated by the harsh afternoon sun, was a mask of unwavering focus, a testament to something he couldn't understand, something that transcended politics and ideology. Something divine. Breathing again. A gargled cough, wet and painful, ripped through the unnatural stillness. Alexei's head snapped up. His father's chest hitched again, a shallow, rattling breath. Then another. His eyelids fluttered. "Papa." Alexei croaked, his voice raw. He reached out, his hand trembling, and brushed a stray lock of sweat-soaked hair from his father's forehead. "Papa, can you hear me?" His father's eyes opened, unfocused and clouded with confusion. He blinked, and a flicker of recognition sparked within them. He squeezed Alexei's hand weakly. A siren wailed in the distance, growing steadily louder. Relief washed over Alexei, so potent it almost buckled his knees. He looked over at Sister Mary, who was still kneeling, her face pale but composed. He couldn't find the words, only a raw, grateful look. The ambulance screeched to a halt nearby. 2 paramedics jumped out, their movements efficient and practiced. They knelt beside Alexei's father, their expression serious. One checked his pulse, the other listened to his chest with a stethoscope. "Someone did good work here," one of the paramedics said, glancing at Sister Mary. "CPR kept him alive. We might have been too late otherwise." He gave her a nod. "You know what you're doing, sister." Sister Mary simply inclined her head, her gaze fixed on Alexei's father. The paramedics swiftly secured him to a stretcher and loaded him into the ambulance. Alexei clambered in after them, his heart still hammering but now with a fragile hope. Forgiveness and understanding. The hospital air, a clinical shroud, tightened around Alexei as he faced Sister Mary's door. Every imagined encounter with her had ended in a fumbled, inadequate apology. He raised a hand, his knuckles inches from the cold steel, a retreat still possible. He could vanish, feign a change of heart, but the vision of her, drenched and shivering from his vicious jest, held him captive. He rapped, the sound sharp in the hushed corridor. A thready voice invited him in. He entered. Sister Mary, propped against pillows, looked frail, though her eyes retained their characteristic kindness. A shadow bruised her temple. "Alexei," she murmured, a note of surprise coloring her words. He approached the bedside, eyes fixed on the linoleum. "Sister Mary," he began, his voice thick with remorse, "I came to beg your forgiveness. My actions were inexcusable. The water, that was contemptible." He struggled to find the words. I was driven by rage, blinded by arrogance. I sought to wound you, to undermine your faith. Yet, you were the one who saved my father. You rescued the person I cherish most. A tremor ran through his voice. I am profoundly sorry. Her hand, delicate as a bird's bones, reached for his. Alexei, look at me. He lifted his gaze to meet hers. I absolve you. Your anger was a tempest, and in its throes, you acted poorly. Real strength, however, resides not in inflicting pain, but in genuine understanding. Her fingers tightened gently around his. Empathy, Alexei, that is what binds us. Learn to nurture that bond, not sever it.